Good afternoon, everyone. And get ready for a wild ride because I have taken the slide deck from a 100-minute talk and I've tried to pare it down to 25 minutes. So between cutting slides and talking faster, hopefully we can make it. Today, I'll be talking about just some general thoughts on threat modeling. So why, how, where should we store things? What should we be doing? How do we get started? So it's meant to really just touch the wave tops. Any one of the subtopics is good for a 30, 45, 60-minute talk. So you're going to get little highlights that hopefully will whet your appetite to hear more, and maybe you'll invite me to come speak at your business. Or we want to talk about maybe, I don't know, perhaps you might want to talk to my employer about buying a tool. Okay, that's the end of my commercial part. So first, as I've asked all of the presenters to do, I want to ask you all to thank our sponsors and hosts for putting on the event. When you see the sponsors at the booths or you see anybody wearing a tag that says they're working with a sponsor, please thank them for supporting the event, because without them, it simply would not have happened. One minute late, and now the room is filling up. Yes! So a little bit about me. The first time I gave this particular talk in a meeting, I talked about this for a really long time. Now I've got it down to like 3 sentences. I started out, coming out of university, I was doing simulation. I did that for a while. I simulated military systems. I did simulations of aviation systems. In between, I was a university lecturer. I've taught computer science, mathematics, web development, operations research, electronics, fun stuff. Then I went over to the dark arts and I became a Java 2 EE developer because it paid more than systems analysis. And I worked my way up to, I was one of the Java enterprise architects for a US federal agency. Then in 2014, I was invited to jump lanes and go from being an architect who cared about security to a security architect. I made that jump, and I've been doing AppSec ever since. I was in the US until the end of 2017. I've been in Auckland ever since. I'll answer the one question you're probably asking. No, I have no intention ever of moving back to the US. But I possibly could be enticed to, I don't know, Australia? Canada? Maybe Canada. Although I don't know, that's kind of where the fallout cloud's going to go, so. My day job, I work for Arius Risk. I am the Asia Pacific Solution Architect. Arius Risk is a commercial threat modeling tool. My primary engagement is I get involved when a customer is interested in the tool and would like to go through a proof of value exercise. And then I do some of the post-sales customer support before we get a customer success architect engaged. I've also been hired by the company specifically as an ambassador for the practice of threat modeling. So yes, doing talks like this is now part of my day job. I love it. I go to conferences, I present threat modeling training, including I'm hoping to be doing a one-day threat modeling class at AppSec Singapore in October. They haven't yet issued the acceptances, but I'm hoping they accept my talk. And then there's my other job, which brought me here all the other times I've been at the front of this room. I'm a chapter leader in OWASP New Zealand. I've been chairing the conference since 2019. I'm on OWASP Education and Training Committee. I'm a co-author of the current version of the SAM model. And last year I started up another project. So I'm the leader of the State of AppSec Survey project. A little bit of a spoiler for the closing session. The State of AppSec survey is not dead, it's just in an extended hibernation. So in the next week or so, we should go live with the survey. And in fact, I'll be looking for some beta testers. What I want to talk about today is software assurance. So what is software assurance? It's the level of confidence that all of your stakeholders have that the software you're producing is free of vulnerabilities, and that it is going to do what it is intended to do, and only what it's intended to do. No hidden features, no Easter eggs, no unexpected surprise function key combinations. Our goal in having a software assurance program is to gain these objectives. I'm pointing to the screen, you can't see. Good job, John. Foster a secure by design culture, improve your code level security, focus on threats and risks in defining requirements. That's a key one in threat modeling. Why are we doing it? So we know what we should protect against. Because if we just say, build me a secure system, where does it end? And ultimately, we want to get to improving our maturity overall by getting some continuous feedback, seeing how well things are going, updating our practices, implementing new standards, so that our overall program gets better. Looking specifically at today's topic, how can I find security issues in applications and systems? Well, there's a bunch of ways we could do it. One approach would be, well, we'll do some static analysis. The code has been written, it's all been committed, it's been reviewed by the architects. Well, now let's run it through a static analysis tool and see if any issues arise. We could run through some dynamic testing, maybe using OWASP Zap or Burp Suite in order to see if there are any unintended runtime vulnerabilities. We could hire a third-party penetration tester to have them run the application through its paces. We could just deploy to production and wait for bug reports. So you'll notice that these are in order from least to most awful. We could rely on incident response. I don't often test, but when I do, it's in production. Well, wouldn't it be better if we'd never even got that far before we looked at security? And yes, this is one of the key lines from chapter 1 of Adam Shostack's book on threat modeling. Wouldn't it be better if we found the issues before we cut any code? So I'm going to run through the 5 W's, and let's see how quickly I can do it this time. So why would we threat model? This is a key one. Overall, you will improve efficiency. It's the slow down to move faster concept. You're going to invest in the process and invest in the mindset, the way of thinking, get the tooling going, get the practices in place, so you will have to slow down to get all of that working right. And then, over the long term, you'll gain efficiency and you'll find that new features are coming out cleaner and faster. It helps everyone to understand requirements better. In particular, it helps developers to know and understand and own why security is telling them to do things a certain way. If you walk through the threat assessment so that you can see, well, this is what we're protecting against, developers will, oh, I get that. Of course we would fix that. Instead of simply being given a list of things they can and cannot do, you go through the process of identifying the threat and showing how the required features address them. Let's avoid rework. You know, there's the infamous curve of level of effort versus stage of development when an issue is identified. While the numbers are not sound, the concept is. The more you have to tear apart in order to fix that early design flaw, the more it's going to cost and the longer the delay is going to be. Just like when you discover in a Lego set down in the Lego build that 35 steps ago, a part was missed. Yeah, that happened yesterday. It improves stakeholder confidence, including the confidence of auditors and regulators. When they see that you have a sound process, and that you can show them a reviewed, endorsed threat model, they are overall more confident in your ability to protect against threats. And increasingly, you're going to do threat modeling because the regulators said so. In New Zealand, that's probably 4 to 5 years away, but it's coming. Quickly, when I talk about threats, I mean these things. So an asset, we're trying to protect assets. And this is anything that your organization considers worth protecting. Clearly, customer data, cardholder data, but it could also be your customer list, your contracts that are under negotiation, your reputation. So I remember yesterday in James's talk, he was saying, well, the Optus breach, among other things, did incredible reputational harm and got, how do you put it, ministerial scorn, I think? So the ministry looked at them and was like, what are you doing? So that hurt their credibility going forward. That's an important asset to protect. A threat is anything that could let anyone or some process obtain, damage, or destroy an asset. So the things we often hear about are privacy breaches where data are exfiltrated. So that would be obtain. If you have an operational system that relies on some core data, you have one copy of the data and it gets destroyed, well, that's going to shut you down for a while. So there's a threat. Let's look at that. A vulnerability is any weakness or gap in our protection efforts. So we look at the threat and we say, how are we going to protect against it? We're going to do these things. Okay, where are the chinks in our armor? Those are vulnerabilities. And risks. The potential for loss, damage, or destruction of an asset because a threat successfully exploited a vulnerability. So ultimately, we want to make sure that threats cannot exploit vulnerabilities. So what's a threat model? It's a representation of a system, the threats to that system that have been identified, and the controls that we're going to implement to protect the system against those threats. A couple of key considerations. To be useful to more than one person, a threat model has to be captured in a persistent, shareable form. What I'm saying here is when you do threat modeling in your head, that's useful to you. When you do threat modeling in a threat modeling tool, it's useful to everyone on the team. So take the time to capture it. To remain or continue to be useful, the model has to be kept up to date. As the system evolves, the model has to evolve. Once the model becomes irrelevant to the current as-built system, you either have to spend a long time and a lot of effort to catch it up, or you stop updating it and lose it. What do you need in a threat model? Well, description of the system, the assumptions you've made, the threats you've identified, your decisions about addressing the threats, both the things you will do and the things you've decided not to because of risk acceptance. And then what is your verification approach? What are our test cases we're going to run? How are we going to verify the selected mitigations are actually in place and working? And then the validation approach. How do we go about checking the model's consistency with the as-built system? Who should take part in this? The key thing is threat modeling as a service, while it can be lucrative for consultants, overall isn't a great thing. What you really want is for the model to be developed with participation of the stakeholders by stakeholders in the system. Within that group, you need to have an owner for the model who is accountable to senior management for making sure the model is kept up to date and the things identified in it are properly addressed. And then you need someone who is responsible for making sure the model is up to date, the maintainers. Key thing here is your security experts are advisors. They are not telling you what's in your threat model. They're asking you questions. They're facilitating. They might be the one actually in the tool drawing the diagram, but they're doing it with your input, not without it. If you hand over to the security team and say, could you build me a threat model, please? They might do it, but you'll lose a lot of the benefit. When should you create a threat model? Well, let me refer you to a classic quote. So the best time to build your threat model was 5 years ago, when you first conceptualized the system. The second best time to build your threat model is now. So start as early as you can. If you've got an existing system that doesn't have a model, get started. And you can use the incremental threat modeling approach, which is due to Irene Michelin, to get started with just some bits and pieces of the overall system as you're making changes to it. So you don't stop the presses, let's spend 3 months building a threat model for this 2 million line legacy system, and then we can start building features again. No, we'll do an incremental approach so we can model as we go. When should you update the threat model? Well, my recommendation is, and this is actually based on some work done by Izar Tarandak, review the threat model every update cycle. Look at what's in scope for this update to the system. Does it affect the threat model? If anything that's in scope, any of the in-scope work will affect the model, then the effort to update the model has to be part of this update cycle. In other words, create a ticket of the appropriate size and put it in this sprint's backlog. Don't put it off. Don't say we'll get to it later. Make it part of this sprint. And I've sort of answered my next question. So what's an update cycle? Usually, it's going to be a sprint. An alternative would be if you have a fixed cadence for releases, each release. So you might have 3 sprints in a release. So you're going to answer this question for everything planned in the release, and then you want to make sure the model updates are completed by the end of the release. But honestly, in experience, I found going with every sprint is actually easier to manage. If you're dealing in the waterfall world, well, God help you, but if you are in waterfall, then it's pretty much every change order. So you get the first requirements document in, you threat model to the document. You get a change order in that modifies your requirements, update the threat model. Where should the threat model live? Lots of words on the slide. Short version, it should not be on one person's laptop, especially if that person is going to get in a head-on collision and destroy his hard drive. And yes, that has happened. Not to me, thankfully. So you put it in a well-known location, make sure everyone can access it, make sure you've got reliable backups. Ideally, you should have versioning. So pretty much we're saying in your repo. And then align your model versions with product versions. So release 1.2 of the application has model version 1.2 stored in a safe place. Okay, so how do I do this? And I see I've got, what, 6 minutes left? Okay. So how? I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. What are we building? We're going to create a data flow diagram. What could go wrong? I'm going to identify the threats. What might I do about it? I'm going to identify the possible mitigations. What will we do about it? I'm going to select from among the possible mitigations some to actually implement. Then I ask the question, given what we are and are not implementing, is the risk owner happy with the residual risk? If not, do better. Then we ask, how are we going to test things? And then we're going to do our model validation. Did we, in fact, model the system accurately? Okay, so for what are we building? We're going to create a model. We're concerned mainly about the technologies used and the data we're storing. Diagramming is the most common approach. Whiteboarding is a great way to start. data flow diagrams are what is most often used. And here is a simple example of a data flow diagram. Moving on to what can go wrong. If you're manually threat modeling, use a prompt tool like Stride or Pasta or Linden. In this case here, I've got Stride. This is going to say, all right, well, so at this component, what spoofing threats should we consider? What tampering threats, and so on. Then you move on to the next component, work through that. If you're using an automated tool, then you're going to rely on the tool's component libraries. You're going to bring in pre-identified threats. Depending on the tool, it may or may not have recommended mitigations built in. So you're going to pull from the tool's libraries in order to identify threats and potential mitigations. So what could we do? Well, we could remove the thing that's giving rise to the threat. Not often an option, but sometimes it's realistic. We're going to implement appropriate controls. They don't have to all be technical. They could be policies and procedures that you use to provide protection. You could accept the risk as is, or you can make it someone else's problem. Not often a real option, but when it is, consider it. Custom mitigations, use them sparingly, because once you create something custom, it's yours forever. You're responsible for maintenance, you're responsible for all testing because there's no community supporting it, so do it only when absolutely necessary. Selecting mitigations, 2 stages. First one, if it's easy, mandatory, or standard, just do it. And mark the corresponding threats as mitigated. So, for example, HTTPS everywhere? Yeah. Encrypt your data stores. These days? Absolutely. So you just do those. For the remaining ones, well, what's the risk if we don't do it? Is that risk significant enough to need to be mitigated? If it is, then what can we do? Do some cost-benefit analysis, select mitigations to apply until you get to an acceptable level of risk, and accept what's left. Okay, verification. Every selected mitigation is testable, so test it. That's what this slide says. Automate wherever you can because manual testing is expensive to repeat. Automated testing is sometimes expensive to create, but it's extremely cheap to repeat. And then we want to validate the modeling work. Threat modeling tools. Now I know, I'm not sure if Willow is here to hear me say this. I'm sure he's outside listening. You don't necessarily need a tool, at least to get started. Whiteboards and sticky notes are a great way to start. Capture those models in Visio using a threat modeling stencil, that's great. The free tools might be enough for you if you have a small enough portfolio to tend. Somewhere around 15 systems, the effort saved by spending money on a commercial tool well outweighs the cost of the tool. And yeah, we had an economic impact study that we commissioned, and using those numbers, that's where I came up with the 15. So it's right around that number. To get started, define your process, get it going. I don't have time to go through all of it. The key thing is don't make it mandatory until you already know it's working. So phased rollout, lots of education, lots of buy-in, show early wins, all the usual things if you want to change practice and make a paradigm shift. And with a minute-ish left, I can take one question? No, actually, I have 6 minutes. I have 6 minutes. Woo! Oh, I did it. I did it. I'm the one who set the schedule, and I forgot.
Yeah. Any questions from the room? Everyone's getting near the end of the day.
All right, make Noah run up the stairs. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, yeah, so I was interested, because often there's a tension, certainly with developers, particularly newer developers, who don't tend to want to not in my experience anyway, want to build and write code more than worry about more non-functional stuff, so security requirements, risk and whatnot. Do you, because you obviously have a lot of experience in the area, tips for how to encourage better practice, better behavior? Because if you tell people, look, we're going to do threat modeling now, and the go in the mandatory approach, then it sometimes doesn't, it's much harder to get buy-in from delivery teams and whatnot. So sort of, have you got any tips for how to approach that with newer developers, particularly, new to the industry and whatnot, who may not have ever touched this stuff at university or whatnot? Yeah.
Okay. So how would we get developers to buy into starting the process? In a previous role, I was at Datacom for a couple of years before Areas Risk. We were engaged with a couple of customers where I was the security champion on the team, and I introduced threat modeling. So I kind of did what was on that previous slide. I said, okay, let's have some training. Let's talk about threat modeling. I went over the 5 Ws. I talked about what we're trying to identify, how we're going to use it to build test cases and verify that we're capturing concerns. And then we just started modeling. So tell me how the system works. You are the authorities on the system, what you put together, how you have it operating. Tell me what it does. I started to capture that in a diagramming tool. And as I started to edit the data flows and the components, then I would ask questions. So as I'm looking at a component, I say, so this is HTTPS, right? And in some cases, the developer go, let me check. And in one particular case, he went and checked and he goes, no, it's not. Change, save, commit. Now it is. Okay. So really, it's just that interactive thing. In particular, it's about trust. So when you're coming into the developers, they don't want to be told they screwed up, that they're doing everything wrong. And in a case where they are, what you want to do is have them come to that horrible realization themselves. So that's why I say don't have somebody go off and build the threat model for the team. Have the team develop the threat model interactively with you if you're the consultant. Because as you start to ask questions, what could happen here? How have you protected against that? What else could we do? They get those light bulb moments of, we didn't think of that. A couple of jobs ago, I was in a meeting where they were presenting to the security team, the internal security team, their approach to a new feature they wanted to implement. And so and honestly, I don't remember the topic. I'm pretty sure the guy I'm talking about isn't here today. And I said, so how did you, or how are you protecting against blah? And as I said that, notice I assumed they were. So I'm asking them to tell me what they chose to do. The architect goes and starts writing. About 10 seconds later, he looks back at me because I was actually sitting behind him, and he says, can we have another meeting in a week, please? So that's a key thing, is always assume that they intend to do the right thing, but they might not have thought of everything. This is all about, let's get together and identify what could go wrong. What corner cases did you not think about? And let's get them on the table and captured now before you build the system. Okay, and how am I on time now?
1 minute.
Okay.
Quick question, someone?
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Hey, thanks for the slides and session. I come from a CM and monitoring perspective. With the automated threat modeling tools that we have currently, does it give me the use case analysis once the threats are identified? And let's say, for example, if we're accepting the risk for next 9 months because we have legacy products and we can't replace them, but I still want to monitor the scenarios where a threat actor can exploit them. So does it also provide me high-level use cases, and so I can build my analytics on top of them?
Does the tool provide the use cases?
For example, if I want to create some analytics sort of firewall rules monitoring, let's say.
Okay,
broad
firewall
example.
rules.
Yeah, and then I have like set of use cases where I can write some queries and then, on top of the logs, I want to write them, yeah.
Well, one tool, which I'm not supposed to name in this talk, the way that it's implemented is that we have a risk pattern library, and under each of our risk patterns, we have a set of use cases. So the built-in libraries have a collection of defined use cases. If a particular use case that your organization has identified is not present in the libraries, you can add it.
Right.
Once it's in the library, you say, these are the components to which that risk pattern applies. And now every time you use that component in a model, those risks are brought in. So the automation is in identifying, because you're using these elements, these are the risk patterns that apply and the threats that come with them.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, thanks.
I think we'll just do announcements and break for lunch, and anyone else who has questions come down to the front and ask you.
All right.
Or do you want to run a little bit into people's afternoon tea?
No, I think we're at like 1 minute till, so thank you very much.